Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to EIG's 30th webinar, Leveraging Operational Propensity to Drive Your Supply Chain Risk and Resiliency with our 90-day action plan utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning. We appreciate that you're taking the time to attend our group of webinars on evolving the resilient enterprise. Especially in light of the COVID pandemic. I can't wait to stop saying that, but it's still going on, and hope that your families are all safe and sound. This is the fourth webinar in our series of webinars for the Supply Chain Risk and Resiliency 90-day action plan. And our first webinar focused on the overall action plan. The second webinar focused on the maturity model. Our last webinar focused on risk appetite. And today we'll be focusing on operational propensity. And then our final webinar next month will be on the 90-day action plan. We look forward to your participation in the webinar with polling questions. And please have your cell phones handy or another screen available on your computer. Again, this webinar is focused on the online assessment that comprises of 90 online questions, taking 20 minutes, culminating into a 90-day action plan. My name is Jim DeVries, founder and president of Enhance International Group. EIG is a platform of 40-plus consulting companies, consultants, and SaaS providers, all dedicated to empowering an organization's workforce to expand and sustain the organization. Our goal is to provide collective, collaborative, experienced thought leadership to enable organizations to deliver self-sustaining, positive margin growth, the competitive advantage over your competitors, and with 90-day action plans. We thrive on delivering the 1 + 1 + 1 = infinity. We hope you find this information valuable. The webinar will be available on our EIG website at the end by this Friday, and the slides we will be sending out to you. So sit back and relax and listen and participate. Again, our upcoming webinars will be on tomorrow. We'll have a webinar on new product introduction, speed to resiliency. Then we'll have another webinar at the end of the month on the digital twins with Creatisoft. So a few more webinars this month, and then next month we'll be continuing on this webinar. So with that, today we are fortunate to have again Greg Schlegel, the founder of Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. He's a celebrated speaker and esteemed author of the book Supply Chain Risk Management, an Emerging Discipline. Greg, a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Welcome, everyone. As Jim mentioned, I am the founder of the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. It's a group as of now of about 30 companies and about 1,500 supply chain risk professionals around the globe. So we bring tools, techniques, methodologies, and solutions that help us identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. I teach supply chain risk management at Lehigh University and ERM, Enterprise Risk Management, at Villanova. Glad you're here to talk about our passion.
Again, welcome everyone. This is, again, focused on operational propensity. Our first three webinars were focused on the overall plan, the maturity model, and risk appetite. Those are available on the EIG website. And then our next webinar is on June 23rd, and that will focus on the 90-day action plan. So with that, Greg, kick us off with the agenda.
Yeah, you bet. Here's what it looks like today. We'd like to start, again, get you grounded, talk about the VUCA world we live in, and give you some insight on the impetus for this tool. So we'll share that with you at the moment. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the 90-90-20 That's, again, Jim mentioned it, 90-day action plan from about 90 questions, and it takes you about 20-some minutes. Next agenda item, the 90-day SCR&R assessment, and the action plan tool will give you another overview of that if you haven't heard that from us in previous webinars. Next, we'll do a deeper dive into this focus area called Operational Propensity Model coming out of the tool. Then we'll finish up with some compelling reasons to act. And essentially, we'll talk about what do you get in its entirety from the tool, and what is our ask in terms of what you need to do to get the outcome of the tool. Again, 90, 90, 20. At the moment, we're in beta mode, so we're providing folks a $500 offer. This full price product is probably around $3,500, and we'll talk a little bit more about the value prop and benefits of being a beta test site during the session. All right, we said we'd start with the VUCA world, all right, and the impetus for the tool, so let's take a look. What is VUCA? Well, it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Let's talk about each one. From a volatility point of view, this describes something that is liable to vary or change, sometimes very quickly and often for the worse. What is that at the moment? COVID and government mandates that we're all living with. Excuse me. Uncertainty is next. This is the state of not knowing or being able to rely on something. What is that? That's the demand and supply shocks that we're experiencing to our supply chains and operations every day. Complexity. This can be defined as something with many parts in an intricate arrangement. What is that? That is our global supply chains that we live with and attempt to manage every day. And finally, ambiguity. Something is ambiguous if it is open to more than one interpretation. And I would say that this to you, all of the above relate to the ambiguity we're all feeling right now in our supply chains. So with that, I'll bring it back to Jim.
So bringing it back to COVID, of course, the biggest risk event we have, John Hopkins, of course, puts this out, and they have many different graphs to look at. And, we understand that, the COVID death rate has come down recently in the US, while abroad, especially in India, it's really spiked to higher levels that in other third world countries, as Brazil continues on, but it's not gone. And whether it's gone in America, it's still going to be around the rest of the world, which is still going to affect our supply chains. We all understand that in the US, the vaccines rolling out is moving in a positive direction. We're well into the 50% vaccine, people vaccinated within states. So it's moving in a very positive direction of hitting that goal of being able to have families together on Memorial Day and 4th of July. I think the original was 4th of July, but now people are talking about Memorial Day, which is fantastic. But what is this doing to our supply chain? And are we experiencing the bullwhip effect? And we definitely are, and we'll continue to see supply demand imbalances. And we're seeing shortages now in chlorine for people with pools. Gasoline is starting. Of course, we'll talk about that in a minute. Rental cars, we know they stopped. The rental car folks sold all the cars. Now they don't have enough. You got chicken wings, bacon and hot dogs, oxygen, shipping containers, blood, And of course, the computer chips is a root cause of a lot of this. And we have a lot of additional areas such as boats, houses, furniture. So we're seeing the effects of COVID, of putting these government mandates and things of that nature that are causing us to have a lot of supply chain disruptions. And we would like to say that, Greg will get to this in a few minutes, that we're really entering a W recovery versus a V recovery like many had thought originally. With that, back to Greg.
Yeah, we said we'd share with you the impetus to develop this tool, and there are several. First and foremost is the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. The next, we saw a very interesting article from McKinsey in November of last year, and thought they encapsulated and put a compelling kind of picture image together for us. So we wanted to share that with you. And it's basically, the title was Why Investing in Supply Chain Resiliency Pays Off. All right. What did they say? The COVID-19 pandemic has once again driven home the necessity of managing operational and supply chain risks. Very good. It has catapulted these issues to the top of CEOs' agendas, and the unexpected now has to be considered probable. We thought they encapsulated the year of 2020 pretty well. The next impetus was our inability as consultants and academics, the inability to sit with companies and lead, guide, direct, and coach them within their company hallways, all right? And that has started, that's been going on since March 2020. And then finally, the last impetus was, as we said a little bit, the staggering and uneven negative impact of the pandemic on manufacturers across all industry sectors due to this artificial demand and supply shock we've articulated a lot of the, I'll say, ugly financial impacts in previous webinars. We don't have any to share with you today, but I'm sure you have lived with some of those negative dollar value impacts. So those are really the drivers to develop this virtual online assessment and action plan tool. Next. With that, additional impetus for the tool came from friends of the consortium. Down on the bottom right, we have friends, we have a lot of partners. This one came from the Institute of Risk Management. They are pure risk financial organization. They have a lot of certificates and certifications in the enterprise risk management and GRC arena. They shared with us the outcome of a global survey with about 900 companies and their CROs, chief risk officers, not supply chain professionals, but chief risk officers across multiple industries. And here's what we saw. We thought this was pretty compelling. Top 10 immediate impacts of COVID-19. Remember, this is at the end of April 2020. The red indicates a major impact, blue significant, per the attendees, and green somewhat impactful to them. Top down, go through them real quick. Rapid changes in objectives of your organization and work, of course. Delays in project. Next, delays in hiring talent. Distraction from your key objectives, but of course, loss of sales, revenue, and orders. It happens. Positive reputational opportunity. We'll pause here. What does that mean? In the pure risk environment, we always say risk is is a double-edged sword. One company's risk event can be another company's risk opportunity. That's what that means, because remember, the respondents are pure enterprise risk folks, not necessarily supply chain people. Others, problems with suppliers, of course, staff absences due to sickness, contractor issues, sure, and then cybersecurity. So essentially, we thought this was pretty compelling as well to us to help folks help themselves, survive and thrive. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. So the World Economic Forum identifies risks. They have 31 risks that they rank. They have 347 risk professionals that rank them, and they did this early this year. And they're really separated into these 5 different groups: economic, societal, geopolitical, technical, and environmental. The top risks are mostly economic and center around the global recession due to COVID, with continued high unemployment, general weakening of the global economy, industries that are unable to recover, causing bankruptcies, consolidations. We can look in the future here, near-term future, for an active M&A environment over the next, let's say, 18 months. So we will definitely see that. And then rounding out the economic areas are an emerging market collapse, as they state here, which currently does not appear to be a threat, according to the stock market and what you read in the news. So hopefully that will not happen. And a prolonged supply chain disruptions, which we're encountering those on a regular basis, as was we saw with the gas pipeline here with the Russian hackers, cyber attacks. So circling back up in societal impact, there are continued concerns about another disease outbreak, of course, with India and different variants that are coming out. There's quite a bit of concern about that. And then the geopolitical risks, including more restricted travel, especially internationally, trade improvement, and geopolitical exploitation of the COVID-19 crisis. And we can see this as the supply demand is continuing to drive quite a bit of very interesting decision making. With the job market, haven't recovered, and with the latest on the labor, that we did not create enough jobs in this last month, and then the U.S. GDP, however, is still forecasted to rise quite a bit in Q2. So this is supposed to be the stellar quarter of the year, maybe reaching 8.6%. So still a lot of volatility, as Greg mentioned before, is occurring in the marketplace.
Yep. We said we'd talk a little bit about the SCR&R assessment tool, the overview of the entire tool, in case you haven't been sitting with us in previous webinars. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jim again, and he'll just go through the overall picture of the tool.
Thanks, Greg. And so, the get is this 90-day action plan via this online survey. The give, of course, is a 7-hour of time over 3 months of yourself, but we've built that in a virtual world so that we can have these collaboration coaching sessions virtually. The process is we're going to ask questions of discovery to tell us where you are, who you are, and how do you operate, and that creates the 90-day action plan. We spent quite a bit of time on each of these areas in the past of the maturity model and the risk perspectives of who you are. Today, again, we'll be looking at how do you operate, and we'll get into what we call the kite. And then what does it take for you is really these 7 steps at the bottom. find a designated lead in your organization to run this. We'd like a cross-functional group of folks in your company to fill out the survey to get a good complexion of your company. And then with that, within a week or two, you'll get the 90-day action plan report. We'll set up a set of checkpoint calls first with a first confirmation of the 90-day plan, making sure you're comfortable with what the report says and does it meet your expectations, and do you feel like it represents your company, so that the 90-day action plan is meaningful for you. These are customized reports. And then at 30 days, how well did that work out? Did those actions, were they amenable to your organization? Were you able to move forward in your supply chain risk and resiliency journey? And then we'll do a pulse check about 60 days. And then at 90 days, we'll close out and ask, what do you want to do next? So that's a quick overview of the program. Greg?
Yep, you bet. We said we'd share with you a little bit of a little more insight into the W-like recovery. So we put this picture together back in April again, April of 2020. We made a call. The picture to us is more of a continuum, all right, left to right, top down. On the top of the slide, from left to right, are the government mandates: lockdown, reopen, first, second, third, nth normal. All right, that's the top of the graph. On the y-axis, on the left, is our segmentation of the global supply and demand arena. On the top left, we have an over-demand and an under-supply dilemma. In the middle, we have pretty much a baseline, which is supply and demand in relative balance. And then on the bottom left, we have the under-demand and oversupply dilemma, and we have the three major on the x-axis, we have the three major segments. We call them business perspectives, but we actually put together a response and called them the 3 R's, and that individual companies would have to react differently within the 3 R's. And let's give you a thumbnail sketch of each section. The first R is respond. The lockdown and the government requirements for products like PPE posed several hardships on many suppliers in healthcare, causing an over-demand situation. These suppliers in healthcare had to quickly rescale all of their supply chains. The secondary effect of the lockdown for sectors other than healthcare was an immediate under-demand and oversupply of their products. This led to an approach of evaluating their product portfolios, which are their SKUs, stock keeping units, their finished goods, and perhaps reducing the marginal products that they make, and even furloughing personnel to do what? Maintain cash flow early on in the lockdown. We've always said cash flow is a red line item. If you can't produce cash, you don't have a business. The second R is recover. Again, the government reopening and the second, third, and more surges of COVID-19 across the globe are manifesting themselves into another over-demand and under-supply of PPE products for those companies who reinvented their portfolios in the first phase to produce new products for new healthcare channels. And in the sectors other than healthcare, the phased reopening is now causing an over-demand and undersupply for those companies who have been closed for months or struggling to maintain product volume, such as the wipes, toilet paper, and on and on and on. And in the third section, the renew. All sectors will have to look hard at their product portfolios. They got to continue to reinvent their portfolios, perhaps continue to rescale their supply chains to deal with existing and new customers and brand new channels, coined the new normal. And finally, as this continuum progresses, it tends to look to us more like a W recovery because of the supply demand shocks, the inherent latency in all of our supply chains to react and rebalance. And therefore, we all will be experiencing the bullwhip effect for a good portion of 2021. We just wanted to share with you our perspective back on April 2020. Jim?
Yeah. So with that, we go to our first polling question on the 3 R's. If you could log into the pollev.com/Jim DeVries 073. It's in the chat window. You can click on that link and join us. And if you could do that and then answer this question, where do you feel your organization resides within these 3 phases, as Greg just described? Respond, recover, or renew. Where do you feel you are at today in your organization? So we'll just give it a few minutes to respond to that. Any comments, Greg, on this?
No, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, some of our folks will be able to give us a sense of where they are based on the 3 sections, 3 definitions of the sections. There's no right or wrong answer. Yeah. It's essentially just where you feel you are relative to the definitions of the 3 R's.
And it's interesting, in the first time we did this early in January, we had quite a number of people in renew and very few in recover and respond. And then last webinar, we didn't have anybody in renew and everybody was in respond and recover. So let's see what happens. So here we see respond and recover, because now maybe folks are feeling these unpredictable shocks more than maybe we even saw as you're closing down the markets. Maybe you felt more controlled here. As they open up, maybe you feel less controlled. I don't know. Your thoughts, Greg?
Well, we're not surprised. This has been going on now since, March and April of 2020. That's really a year, 13 months now. It's getting long in the tooth. We know that. We sympathize with folks who are manufacturing and attempting to run a business just like us. But I'm not surprised that we don't have that many folks in the renew, Jim, because it's just not over yet.
Yeah, I think people realize it's going to be a while. All right. Well, thanks everyone for participation.
Appreciate that. All right. We'll move on. We wanted to move into another section before we get into the meat in terms of operational propensity. We just wanted to get you grounded on what we consider is the maturity model, especially for those folks who may not have sat in on previous webinars. So we'd like to just give you the overall sense of the maturity model, and then we'll move into a deeper dive with the operational propensity graphs. So just for your edification, this is our 5-stage supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model. We built it 10 years ago. It's the baseline for our book, our workshops, and our entire body of knowledge. All right. So we feel pretty confident in this maturity model as it relates to supply chain risk and resiliency. So what do we have? We got 5 stages. On the y-axis, we have supply chain risk and resiliency maturity. of an organization from low on the bottom to high on the top. On the x-axis, we have competitive advantage from 0 on the left to infinity on the right. And then we have our 5 major stages. And I'll give you a thumbnail sketch real quick, and then we'll move into the operational propensity. Foundational, what does that mean? That means you don't really talk about supply chain risk. You're not sure what resiliency is, and you're at ground zero, but you'd like to move forward. So we'll talk about a potential action item for organizations who are positioned in the foundational area. Next one is visibility. What does that mean? That means supply chain visibility upstream to your suppliers and downstream to your customers. End-to-end visibility. Why? Because what you don't know about your supply chain can and will hurt you. The third is predictability. May not be exactly what you're thinking. Predictability to us is sense and respond. And we advocate you digitize your supply chain, put it into a digital model. Why? So that you can do what we call what if scenarios. All right. What if I have a supplier that has a fire? What if I have a customer on the demand side who goes out of business and it's 30% of my revenue? All right. That's what we mean by predictability, to be able to see and witness and test, stress test your supply chain, to see how your supply chain will react today to a risk stimulus. All right. Fourth, resiliency. These are all the tools, techniques, methodologies, solutions that we advocate you begin to use as best practices and embed them into your daily supply chain lives. And finally, sustainability. It's not the green, even though the placard is green, it's not green. It's how do we sustain this journey, and we advocate the use of ERM type tools, enterprise risk management tools, across the enterprise. So those are the 5. What you see on the bottom, we like to superimpose a heat map in terms of the model. If you're in foundational and you're just starting visibility, we think your supply chain is at high risk. As you move up the continuum in the model, you can mitigate the risk, turn it into a medium, maybe even turn it into a low as you become much more mature in this space. And so we call this the where are you? All right. And in fact, in the tool, when you answer the survey questions, you essentially, we will position based on your answers, we will position to the best of our ability using AI and ML algorithms, will position your organization within these 5 major stages. So with that, I'll give it back to Jim so he can chat with you about the operational propensity deliverables in this tool.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Sorry, computer's not responding. But we'll get right into operational propensity in just 1 second. There we go. Thanks for your patience. With Greg's description of how to navigate the resilient enterprise journey through the maturity model, we'll next explore how your company's operational propensity, drives your ability to go fast through this supply chain risk and resiliency journey. And, where you are and where do you want to go is an appetite for change perspective. We are seeking to understand the leadership's commitment for this transformation on this supply chain risk and resiliency journey to build and evolve that scaled framework to become a resilient enterprise. So we're going to look at this graph. It's a little bit complex. It's got 4 quadrants, 4 axes. So we're going to try to take it slow here. And the axes represent the heartbeats, the internal cadences, while the quadrants represent the personas. So that's how this graph is laid out. On the primary y-axis is the speed. On the left-hand side, you see from slow to fast, and on the x-axis, you have stability control that moves from efficiency to collaboration types of environment. On the secondary y-axis, on the right side, you see agility, and that goes from weak to strong. And then on the top x-axis, we have external focus and differentiation of your company, and that goes from narrow to broad. So it's through these internal focuses, which is the first two axes, and the external focus that you look at your company and how we have laid out these axes. And again, this is based on the competing values framework by Kim Cameron and Robert Quinn, very old and established approach to gaining an insight to your operational propensity. So we're going to look at this heartbeats one more time. Again, the speed index is that slow, bureaucratic to fast startup. It's moderated, controlled heartbeat versus a long sprint. And then you move to the blue at the bottom, and that's stability and control. Again, efficient, bureaucratic to collaborative clan. And here we're closely monitoring controlled versus we are all one type of thought leadership. And then here on agility, on the purple side, on the right-hand side, we move from weak trapped to strong agile. And these were constructed aligned versus a strong agile heartbeat. And then on the top again, we move from narrow focus startup to a broad agile. And here we're focused on a high rate conditioned on a slow focus goal versus a balanced, moderate to high changing environment. So an agile environment are those companies that are looking to change and are changing either because they want to or because it may be the competitive nature in their marketplace. So next, we'll get into the personas on how do you operate. And so for each persona, we'll start from the bureaucratic in the left-hand quadrant at the bottom. And the bureaucratic is more hierarchical, structured, controlled coordination, efficient stability, controlling orientation with slow speed, and efficient stability control. Where when we move to the right, and to the right bottom corner, are companies that are considered to be trapped. They're clannish. It's an extended company, division mentoring, nurturing, and with weak agility and strong collaboration and stability and control. And then moving counterclockwise to the upper right, companies that are agile are companies that have the traits of being dynamic, entrepreneurial, risk-taking, and they value innovation, and they have a creative orientation about them. And they have a strong agility and a broad external focus and differentiation. And then finishing up in the upper left-hand corner, a startup company, we're looking at entrepreneurs that are market-based, thought leadership, results-oriented, get the job done fast, values competition, and therefore they're always in a competitive orientation, and they want to move fast and they have a narrow focus and differentiation. So they're very targeted. And what's interesting is when you look at historically, almost half are what we would call a narrow broad kite, meaning as you see the scales from 0 to 10 from the center of this diagram, when these are very short legs of the kite, let's say, if these are short, most of the companies are there. Very few companies are very strong and agile, strong in startup, or real strong and bureaucratic. There's only weak in others, but a company that's strong in everything is very unusual. So that's a bit about how to look at a kite. And so where we get interesting discussions is what's your shape complexion and what's the shape of your kite. So do you have a single tail or do you have two tails? And where is your tail? Is it in the trap, bureaucratic, agile, startup? What's your propensity? And then is your kite skinny or fat, as we just discussed? Or could you have where you're equal on all four of these areas, where you're trying to do everything for everyone? And then the final question is, how long could you fly a kite in gusty winds? So if it's a nice steady wind, how well does your kite fly? And then if it's gusty wind, how robust is your company in the way that you operate? So it's pretty interesting how well this applies to real life, but proof is in the pudding. So we have some examples. So the first example that we have is what we would call a classic single tail kite. It's narrow. Is it narrow or wide? It's kind of in between, but it's what you would think is a traditional kite. In this case, they are bureaucratic. It follows that type of a persona. They're bureaucratic, and you can see startup and trapped are about equidistant, maybe a little bit more on startup than trapped. But this is what we would call the classic. And you also notice when we moved here, we did something in our report is we wanted to emphasize the kite, that the area, the persona, where it's the strongest. So whatever's the strongest is rotated to the bottom. So in this case, it's bureaucratic. Again, just to be clear, there's no right or wrong. It's what you are. And just understanding who you are so that we can better understand how to navigate the supply chain risk and resiliency journey. So now we move to the double tail kite. And here you can see it looks a little bit the same as the other ones, but here you're seeing more on the startup, and we have two tails, and there's nothing wrong with this. So you might see this type of situation where you have a strong company that is producing a product and it's been making money, and then you're bringing in different M&A activities or startup companies on top. So you kind of have a bifurcated approach. You have your base business, and then you have a startup business to try to grow your overall revenue and growth for the stockholder. So I'm going to pause here for a second and ask Greg, do you have some additional thoughts or perspectives on either of these first two kites?
Well, I think you're right. I think it is. It's a little tricky, a little complex. We know that, but the single double tail, we think it's very interesting as it relates to your culture, how you operate. So that is essentially, we're trying to get that temperature check, that culture check within the confines of the questions of discovery for the entire tool to render an effective profile for you in terms of the 90-day action plan. So this is one of 3 areas within the questions of discovery, and to us it's very very interesting and also hopefully compelling for not only us but for you as a beta test site.
And if you do have questions, please enter them in the chat box. We'd love to gain your feedback on this approach. And we're going to go ahead and explore the next kite while we're waiting. And this is, again, a double tail, but we thought we would say, well, what happens if one of the tails is startup? And this is a real life company. And this is, a private equity firm perspective, get her done, or startup is driving it, but maybe they have a bureaucratic background. So they're kind of moving, how do I build a company quickly? And then they have tendencies to want to put that, once it's up and running, into that persona of a more of a bureaucratic standard approach. Again, there's no right or wrong, but this is what we see when we look at a private equity type of a activity, especially if you're starting up a company in an industry that is similar to this. This is what would happen often, not always, but could happen. Greg, any thoughts?
Well, to me, it's very interesting, and I hope perhaps to the audience, I perceive this graph as area under the curve graph. And essentially what you see in different types of kite graphs is the area under the curve, looking at kind of the Likert numbers. It's very interesting when you see and try to imply what the large area under the curve could mean relative to each kite's different profiles. So I think we said that you could have area under the curve higher than the previous kite, and it might indicate things like, you are trying to do two major threads at once, or even more. And that, to us, we're looking for positive feedback. When we demonstrate this kite to a beta testing company, we ask questions of discovery to see if in fact these things are going on based on what we see graphically. So I think think of the area under the curve. That to me is very, not only the long tail and maybe even a second tail, but the difference in area under the curve from kite to kite, from company to company. So that's what intrigues me a lot.
Yeah, it's a great point, the area under the curve. And as we can see here, the greatest area under the curve is definitely aligned to speed, which is very aligned to a PE type mentality.
Yeah,
and
sure.
how they're running the company. So it does make sense. So again, please, any questions you have or comments, we'd love to hear them in the chat. We move to the last type of kite. If you can think about what the most interesting kite is, a box kite. So we were surprised, as you may be, that there are companies that try to operate this way, and we feel pretty confident that that is the case. And of course, this company is trying to do everything. And if as Greg mentioned, the Likert scales, as you make a smaller box kite or a larger box kite, as we mentioned, everything within 4 or above 4, I think it's more rare to see companies that are mature box kites, meaning they're going to be greater on all these 4 quadrants, versus kites where they would be all within the range of 0 to 4, or the max of 4, let's say. So there may be more internal cooperation actually in a larger kite than a smaller kite. So these are things that we would look at and discuss with you. Again, there's no right or wrong. And we're just trying to understand what makes your company tick and how you're going to navigate the supply chain risk and resiliency, because we want to help you build tools to help support that effort. So I think could be a question in there.
Yeah, it came from Jay Kurish. He was more or less saying, very, very interesting. Thanks for sharing. So I answered him real quick. I'm not sure if he's still on.
Okay, great. So Greg, you want to add your 2 cents on the box kite?
Again, it's very interesting. As we said, the area under the curve, we're doing this with algorithms based on questions of discovery, based on different perspectives from your company in terms of people in different disciplines. We're looking for that variability. We take those numbers and attempt to provide a profile of your operational propensity, all in an effort, as Jim said, to essentially give you an effective and compelling 90-day action plan to move you forward in this supply chain risk and resiliency journey. So we've seen a host of different kites, and we get very engaged with this portion of the tool, because it has so many independent and interdependencies, but it's basically a picture image of your culture as well.
Thanks, Greg. So with that, we'll just close out this section with some key takeaways. And as we said, there's really no good or bad kite. It's just what it is. And depending on where you are at in your journey as a company, as a corporation, you know, it is what it is. Embrace that shape. And as Greg just mentioned, understand what that is so that you can take that into account as you lay out your goals for the supply chain risk and resiliency indoctrination into your company. And again, don't be too concerned if your company has multiple personas. Understand them and manage them proactively is what we espouse. And then whoever that lead is for your company, understanding that there's different personas across the company and different heartbeats across the company will help you navigate your journey of implementing this supply chain risk and resiliency, because it involves so many different folks across your company, from marketing and sales to sourcing to operations to logistics to finance. So many different folks need to get involved and be part of this overall journey. And then we all know that, as you know, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So we need to understand this. So we need to understand how fast can we go and for our execution. And then last but not least, you know, operational propensity, of course, is essential to the success of your journey, as I mentioned before. Greg, any closing comments on this slide?
Nope. We'll try to produce a big finish here.
Yeah, so what we'd love to gain your feedback in the on the survey, what type of operational propensity challenges you would have to manage today that may slow you down in your ability to further the journey or in your risk decision making. Again, just trying to gain some insights. There's no right or wrong. We all have to deal with these issues. So if you could share those, that would be wonderful. If Greg, any additional comments here?
No, this gets into perception. All right, we would just we would just like to ask if from what you saw, whether you see any challenges, because again, this has to do with culture, and culture means change management and behavior modification. And that is normally the hardest element of supply chain risk and resiliency to get done. So
we thought we'd throw out the question, but we also understand that you may feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. We understand, because this is sensitive. So we're just going to move on with that to the last section here and close it out.
Yeah, in fact, we'll just want to share with you a couple compelling reasons to act. I think Jim's going to go over the overall slide again and give you the offer to be a beta tester, and then we'll finish up with the ask and the get.
Thanks, Greg. And so again, this is the layout. We'll get the where you are, who you are, how you operate. These are, remember the 90-90-20, 90-day action plan you receive from 90 questions, and it only takes 20 minutes to fill out per user. And again, we would look to see 3 to 5 people in your company. The more, the merrier. And it's at a very low price of $500. And we will provide you that evaluation for your company using these algorithms. So it's unbiased, and it's available today, and we get started at any time. And Greg, you want to close us out with?
Yeah, well, we said we'd give you an example of foundational. Remember, foundational is the first of 5 stages. So if you were to go through the tool and answer all the 90 questions, an example of what might come out of the tool if you're in the foundational element or in the foundational stage would be something like this. Maybe we would recommend you enroll in one of our online courses, resulting in a certificate from Lehigh. That's one. Another one, we could essentially you could possibly purchase our SCM book if you want, if you're more into reading versus taking a course. Another one might be to begin the supply chain risk and resiliency education dialogue with other departments, whether you read the book, whether you take the course, but now you're educated, you're aware, and you start talking horizontally to other departments about what you've learned. Then we might ask or advocate that you secure a sponsor to move the supply chain risk and resiliency dialogue forward. That means funding. Someone who can fund your journey and provide executive cover. Another one might be get engaged with us in the 5 webinar guidance calls. If you sign up, you saw the guidance calls. We attempt to lead, guide, direct, and coach you so that you have a very positive 90-day experience. And then finally, after the 90 days, you might think about maybe doing a 3 to 5 day on-site or virtual workshop to accelerate your education and benefits to your division or your organization. So that we wanted to share an example of being in a foundational phase and what the action plan might look like. Next, I think we have the get. What really is the get? You get a sense of where you are in the supply chain maturity curve, as we said, will position you. You get a sense of who you are relative to your risk appetite and your operational propensity. And then you get an aligned 90-day action plan so that you can survive and thrive during this COVID-19 and beyond. And essentially, we're saying that if you take the action item, if you get into the tool and exercise, you're gonna learn how to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage these supply chain risks. Basically, one of our mantras is, why do I want to do this? I want to know risk events sooner and act faster than my nearest competitor. If you do that, what do you get? Strategic advantage to the bottom line. And on top of that, we have a bonus. For every company that provides 5 or more executives in the beta arena, the consortium will offer your company 1 free pass to our online course. That's a value of $1,400, including a certificate from Lehigh University. And so what is the ask? There's the get. What's the ask? Essentially, we said this a couple times, 5 to 8 executives providing independent insight. Independent, we should highlight that. We don't want groupthink. We want different perspectives from different folks in different parts of the organization. 90 questions, 20 to 30 minutes. Here's a profile, especially if you're a manufacturer, here's kind of the profile of those departments or disciplines. We want folks from disparate types of disciplines to give us their perspective. And then finally, I believe we're looking for the executives in your organization aligned to the same division or product line. We would like to keep the dialogue and the answers in like a homogeneous small scale group. So either one division and or one product line. That's basically our ask.
With that, I think we're all set for the webinar. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or follow us up on our emails that are on the first slide. And we do have future webinars coming up. Again, first of all, we'll have another webinar here in June on the 23rd. Then we have some upcoming webinars on June 9th is a fireside chat on new product introduction. But before that, tomorrow, we actually have a webinar on agile sprints blended with phase gate discipline. And then we'll continue our artificial intelligence webinar series that you'll see in June on the 22nd. And then on May 25th of this month, we'll get back to digital twins with CreatorSoft. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll be having one of our partners, NVIDIA, providing us hyper automating your business, sometimes called intelligent process automation. And we will go through and define what automation provides and what hyper automation is and how it can really help you and your organization. So those are our upcoming webinars, quite a lot going on. Again, we're aligned to people, process, data, and technology. You can find all these on our website classified in those areas. We also have a search engine on our website so you can easily find what you're looking for. And these are a sample of our partners. Of course, we have the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium and many other companies here and that are espousing to drive that resilient enterprise. And Greg, you want to say a few words on your placard?
Well, it's just, we appreciate everyone staying with us. We're a little over our time clock, but this is our passion. Supply chain risk and resiliency. It's what we do. We do online education, virtual training like this, classroom certificates. We're an eclectic group that has a passion for supply chain risk and resiliency. We think we have probably the largest capability from a depth and a width point of view to handle, lead, guide, direct, and coach almost any type of organization wherever you are in the existing supply chain risk management maturity model. So that's our passion, that's our capabilities, and we thank you for staying with us beyond 1 o'clock.
Thank you so much for staying 5 minutes over. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and please follow up if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you.